And welcome back to another one, friends. We are back again. This is the place where the magic begins. Welcome back to another episode of Spills and Scepters, the Breakdown Podcast. We got into a lot of interesting stuff in the last podcast. Probably way too much lore, maybe a little more lore than y'all wanted. But if we didn't have enough lore, let me tell you what. We got some more lore on the way today. Actually, we have a couple skits prepared for you guys. We have some breakdown information, and we wanted to present it to you guys in a little bit of a different way because we're going through and filling some gaps of things that we've missed and that we weren't able to get out on the podcast list when we wanted to because we just were juggling other projects at the time. So, going back, connected what we've missed with the transcripts by our awesome note taking duo. We have filled in the dots as to what we might need to retouch back up on before moving too much farther into the story. Again, some of those things are so easy to cover, like the opening pages of the module. Some of them are a little bit tougher to cover because they are very crucial parts of the story. And we can't give away too much while also we need to go back and make sure we recover these things and present the information in a new way. So I've thought up a fun, creative way for us to be able to do that, and it's going to make this episode of the podcast very special because I don't know if we're going to be doing this too much in the future, as it's not going to be me just dropping information or having a guest on that is coming back and forth with information as we're just exchanging it, but it is instead going to be presented in a more storytelling like format, like a lot of the novelization is. So it's going to be a pretty interesting one. I really hope that you guys enjoy, and let's get into it. Let's get magical. On monsters, magic, and of hollow will, people speak of monsters as if they were born wrong, as if claws make them cruel, as if fangs make them wicked, as if the shape of a body decides the weight of a soul. But that is a comfort we tell ourselves, because the truth is far more frightening. Monsters are not lesser because they hold less magic. They are feared because they hold more. Every living thing in Nomatica is touched by magic. That much is known, but monsters are saturated by it. Their blood hums with the raw arcana. Their bones remember spells that we were never taught to cast. Their breath bends the world around them without effort or intent. A single wyvern carries more magical energy in its wing than a trained battle mage will ever channel in a lifetime. A forest fiend breathes ley light with every wound, and even the smallest abjuration, something scuttling in the dark, can warp fate by simply existing. And yet, they cannot use it. Magic is not power alone. Magic is knowledge. Magic is discipline. Magic is the will to decide when not to act. Humans learn magic through study, elves through tradition, moonfolk through harmony, and shadow veiled through the restraint, though feared. But monsters are born with magic already screaming inside of them. They are vessels without channels, storms without directions, fires without hearts, and worst of all, they have no soul shaped to hold the burden. A soul is not just life. A soul is choice. It is the weight that says, I could destroy, but I will not. I could take, but I will wait. I could burn the world, but I will bear the pain instead. Monsters do not lack awareness. Many can think, some can even reason. What they lack is control. The magic inside them acts first. Hunger becomes before thought. Fear becomes before violence. Pain before annihilation. Not because they are evil, but because there's nothing inside of them strong enough to say stop. This is why monsters multiply where magic is wounded. Where ley lines fractures, monsters breed. Where ancient spells collapse, monsters awaken. Where civilizations fall, monsters crawl. Out of the scars, they are drawn to the excess magic like blood to sharks. And in centuries since the War of Sundering, magic has been bleeding everywhere. Once mages kept balance, wards, sanctums, ritual grounds, spells were guided outwards, dispersed, redirected, but now magic pools. It stagnates, it seeps into a forest and ruins, forgotten battlefields, and something answers, not with intention and malice, with instinct. This is what lied the kingdom tell their people, that monsters appeared because magic is evil. No, monsters appeared because magic was abandoned, because no one was left to teach its restraint. Look at the monster long enough and you will see it. The hesitation before it strikes, the confusion when it kills too much, the way some flee instead of pursuing victory. That is not mercy, that is conflict. A body screaming with power and a mind incapable of guiding it. A beast tries and failing, but to more than it was made to be. There are records buried deep. In Miss Vale's oldest vaults, creatures once classified as monsters that were taught. Beasts calmed by sigils, abominations stabilized through ritual, creatures that learn patterns, boundaries, and even loyalty, not tamed, but balanced. When the world does not like that truth, because if monsters can be guided, then the line between them and us becomes very thin. The Legion slays monsters because it is simpler. Steel has no doubt. Steel does not ask why. Steel does not wonder whether the thing it kills could have been something else. Knights are praised, villages are saved, and the magic inside the monsters is released violently back into the world, where it will eventually form another. In this cycle that no one wants to admit exists, magic abandoned, monsters born, monsters slain, magic released, monsters born again, and so the world bleeds endlessly. Some whisper that monsters are punishment, others say that they are nature correcting itself, but the oldest text tells a different story. Monsters are warnings. They are what happens when power exists without wisdom, when strength exists without purpose, when magic exists without responsibility. They are the reflections of what any species could become. And remember this, the first monsters were not beasts, they were people. Arcanists who drew too deep, soldiers reforged by forbidden spells, scholars who bound magic without understanding the cost. The world remembers their shapes but has forgotten their names. So when you stand before a monster, claws dripping, eyes burning with arcane light, do not mistake it for a creature of chaos. It is a vessel, overflowing. It is a tragedy given teeth. It is magic screaming for someone strong enough, wise enough, whole enough to tell it what to be. And if no one ever does, the Nomatica will continue to drown in power it refuses to understand. Not because monsters exist, but because no one remembers anymore how close we all are to becoming one. And that is a awesome opening that I cooked up here for us, just actually for this podcast, because I really wanted to drive home our next skit before we really got to it. Some things that we're breaking down behind the scenes that are a little complex to digest, as if you were only catching up with the first couple episodes in mind. But if you've caught up to episode 3 and episode 4, and you're a little bit farther in the series, then you would know that some of these tones of these monsters popping up has been underlined in this series for a while. And though we've only had 2 battles so far, two actual fights, one of them was with some of these mutated monsters, and this theme is going to take a while to get our payoff. Um, as now, the party is away, safe, within the confines of Mistvale. Um, and so we won't really get a lot of this monster storyline for a while. So just kind of like we did with the opening for the module and going over those first couple pages and breaking down how it ties into the first couple episodes, I made each of these with the idea of how we're going to tie it in back into these first couple episodes if you're digesting them from there. So if you guys have at least caught up to episode 3, we have seen a couple different quote unquote monsters from this time going forward. A lot of which we have maybe not even recognized as a quote unquote monster. Um, in episode 1, of course, we get introduced to what was slowly forming to be a monster, that cursed stone. And we'll get into that, of course, in the next skit. And then in episode 2, A Crossroads of Destiny, we get introduced to Morph, which was never supposed to be Morph, but would later be tamed and docile and become Morph. Um, but was originally supposed to just be a spirit, be a lantern spirit, and kind of show how troubling this path could be without directly bringing them into a confrontation. And if it did, this thing would survive like one hit, maybe. Its case would fall apart, and it would run away before eventually dispersing and being no more. Um, but instead, they managed to somehow tame that sprite, and as a team they now have it as their mascot companion, which I think is going to add even more epicness to the world, because it really is showing how these creatures don't only have to be monsters as they're kind of seen as, but um, as we've seen with our team being able to like capture and tame one, we know that they're not just monsters. The archival grand report. Vale studies the prohibited copy. A treatise on the veil, soul circulation, curse, genesis, emergence, true, cursed entities. Author Thorilian Veloquest, High Elf Arcanist, researcher of the Elder Concord, former keeper of the Silver Archive, witness to the closing years of the War of Sundering. Preservation Seal, Miss Vale Sanctum, Vault of Echoes, Access Classification, Black Veil Restricted. Opening Declaration. Let this record stand as truth, not comfort. I have watched civilization rise on principles that they did not understand and collapse beneath consequence they refused to name. And if this work is feared, it is because fear is deserved. The veil does not forgive ignorance. Magic does not care for morality. Souls do not linger politely. My first works. Correcting the fundamental error. Most arcane academies teach the veil as a barrier, and this is incorrect. A barrier implies separation. The veil is connection under tension. It is stretched boundary between continuation and conclusion, between material plane and the next. It is woven from the passing of souls, not their presence. The veil is strongest where souls move on, and weakest where souls remain. This is not philosophical conjecture, it is measurable reality. You have to see the veil not as a wall, but as a soul engine. Through centuries of astral resonance measurements, my colleagues and I have confirmed the veil functions as a pressure membrane maintained by the steady migration of souls into the next plane. This process requires three conditions: life lived, death accepted, passage completed. When these conditions are fulfilled, the soul reinforces the structure of the next plane, which in turn stabilizes the boundary between worlds. This stabilization is cumulative, and thus more people, more life experiences, more deaths, more souls crossing, stronger metaphysical infrastructure, thicker veil. Life, therefore, strengthens the veil only when death is allowed to conclude it. And thus, my work was completed, and a new thesis approached my mind: love as a structural force. The veil does not respond merely to numbers, it responds to emotional anchoring. Souls that have loved, truly loved, cross more easily. Love creates closure, closure creates motion. Communities bound by affection generate smoother soul flow than empires built on fear. This explains why tightly knit villages often resist hauntings better than fortified cities. Love is not sentimental, it is structural. In Death Without Passage, when a soul fails to pass, the system destabilizes. Causes include sudden violent death, magical interruption, emotional fixation, ritual interference, intentional cursecraft. These souls do not dissipate, they accumulate. Each lingering soul weakens the veil locally, thinning its stretched cloth. Thin veil zones become receptive to magical bleed through, echo manifestations, and spontaneous monster formation. This is why ruins are dangerous. This is why battlefields rot. Life magic versus death magic is a necessary reframing. The dichotomy of light and the dark magic is academically indefensible. The accurate classification is life anchored intent versus death anchored intent. Life anchored magic, charms, blessing, wards require love, trust, hope, sacrifice, protection. These spells reinforce continuity. They encourage the veil to remain stable. The strongest charms cannot be cast alone. They require sincerity. However, death anchored magic, curses, hexes, bindings, requires hatred, fear, betrayal, cruelty, despair. These spells do not merely kill, they interrupt the soul's trajectory. In the true definition of a curse is not a harmful magic. A curse is a metaphysical theft. A properly executed curse ends biological life, severing the soul's momentum, preventing passage, anchors to the soul to reality, and the soul is denied its ending. This denial is the true crime of a curse. We've seen this on spirits and the misclassification. Most bound souls do not become violent. The majority manifest as echo spirits, habit loops, guardians, witness, dream bleeds. Many are benevolent, some are even helpful. The danger emerges when intentional manipulation occurs. Cursecraft. Deliberate soul deformation. Dark cultists who understand the veil but reject its balance have refined cursecraft into a process of soul weaponization. They do not merely bind souls, they break them. This is that process. Stage 1. A bound soul. Aware, confused, emotional. Stage 2. Torture through unfinished business. The soul is forced to relive regret, hatred, betrayal. This suffering increases metaphysical density. Stage 3. The object binding. The soul is fused into a symbolic item, weapons, jewelry, tools, remains. The object becomes a focus of despair. Stage 4. Curse iteration. Left unsanctified, the item radiates veiled corruption. Magic curls, animals flee, and dreams sour. Stage 5. The cursed creature. The soul fragments across planes, forming a partial manifestation, a haunting shadow shaped by its cause of death. This entity leaks darkness continually. Stage 6. True curse entity. The fragments recohere. A complete demon is born, not an outsider, but a wound given form. Case 6. Class information and case studies. The Glass Bride. A woman murdered on her wedding night, soul bound to a shattered mirror. The result was a spirit that appears to be abused, offering escape routes. Classification: benevolent, veil damage, moderate. Case: the Iron Howl. A warhound cursed alongside its handler. Result: a spectral beast that hunts deserters exclusively. Classification: hostile, but focused. Case study: the Crown of Briars. A king cursed by his heirs. Result: a thinking cursed entity that whispers ambition to rulers. Classification: extreme. Artifacts sealed beneath mist veil. Case: the bell that refused silence. Village cursed by collective fear ritual. Each soul bound simultaneously. Result: a permanent veil rupture. Classification: irreversible. This is my case information, study, and theories. I conclude with final warnings. Monsters are not intruders. They are accumulated mistakes. Cursed creatures are not invaders from elsewhere. They are shadows of lives denied conclusion. The veil weakens, not because death exists, but because endings are stolen. If the Legion truly wished to protect the world, they would sanctify battlefields. If kingdoms wished to end monsters, they would allow souls to rest. If magic were understood instead of feared, Nomatica would heal. But instead, the world sharpens its swords, and wonder why the dead refuse to leave. Thoralian Velacus. Let this knowledge wound you, so the world does not have to. And with that, we're going to go ahead and pull up the transcript so that we can lead you guys straight into the episode that we're pulling from here. There's a lot going down with these two skits that we just broke down. Probably gonna have to go back and rewatch definitely to get the full breakdown of what he's talking about. There are tons of little lore sprinkled in there as well. So there's just so much there, but there is even more in these transcripts that our note team was able to get. So we're going to go back over here to these notes and get back into it. Just like we did for the last podcast. So yeah, we left off with the forest being like just off in the distance. The group had met up and decided to eat one meal before packing up the camp and all heading off into the forest even deeper together. There was some weird feelings here back and forth, a little bit of tenseness. Um, Everyone kind of like, oh my, well, we all met here coincidentally. Ain't that a little sketchy? Um, and they ventured together deeper into this forest for quite some time before stumbling upon a meadow where they heard this soft thump of magic being radiated and bled out. Uh, Vero, who had shadow sense, dark sense, was able to use it to locate this magic in a more visualized context, seeing it coming directly from this cursed stone that was on the ground. Who he ran up and started investigating it, which by the time he had investigated it, Jimbo had ran up and snatched it out from under him, and it had become a whole thing back and forth until uh, it had ended up back in Vero's hands, but had activated and had begun like choking him with this mystical binding. It was actually insane. Being one of the first interactions they got to magic, this was a very, very scary interaction. So these black tendrils started latching out from it and wrapping around the wrists and neck, trying to basically suffocate you. And Vero was like fighting this off, but unwilling to let it go. And Jimbo had just picked it up and been fine, even though he should have been weak to it. So it was crazy back and forth for the two of them as they were having this banter and kind of arguing over the stick and rock. And it was just honestly a really, really crazy session. Um, I think that it took us a lot of time to get through the forest and to let the forest kind of digest into the background. And it finally did when they had finally made their way out of the forest after they had fought over this rock and had this almost close encounter with not only two giant wild hyenas but also a dragon roaring off in the distance, had been enough to scare them out of this forest. They had gotten the sun petal bloom and they had everything they needed. They're like, yep, we don't need to go any further into this forest. And they got out of there. This whole thing was set up to kind of not only teach them the mechanics, get your full use out of your turn, what you can do, but it also gives them a very easy intro to what a dungeon would be like. Go in there, get your loot, get out, extract with your loot. So it was a multi-layered setup. There was a lot of things that were going on with this episode. It was definitely more than just a forest, and that is why it was so cool to have all these magical, crazy, mysterious things going on with the forest, like Jimbo trying to light it on fire and the brush just like literally disappearing under the ground. And when they had finally decided as a group, everyone had clarified that they wanted to leave. The forest was just gone. It was just there in the background as if they had never even entered it, though the ground around them remained the same. Their campsite was still there. The fire, or what wasn't a fire, but a built, wood all stacked together, not quite lit yet, not quite a fire just yet, but it was still all there, and the forest was gone. It was just a crazy setup. I really, really loved this intro. I mean, this is probably one of the most well-written ideas that I've had. That I th- I really don't think it even has set in on people as to what this forest actually was. And if you're following along with the episodes by title, it really comes across really crazy. I mean, there is just so much in the idea of this forest that you guys are not able to digest because you can't see behind that DM screen. And we just haven't got enough of the clues yet. But they are there. There are clues kind of building our way up to it. Um, and it is definitely a huge mystery. Um, as Yeah, so anyways, they had gotten together and everyone had decided to leave. The forest had disappeared into the background. And the thing that we just aren't really able to put together because it is definitely like hinted at and kind of in the background, but that's what this uh forest is. And we'll definitely get into it as we get into like the fairies and the storyline with them and stuff. But just in my notes over here, the of things that you guys should know is that the forest of Nightfen is where the world hesitates at. Most forests grow from the soil, but the Nightfen grows from unfinished moments. It appears on maps as this woodland gnarled with trees and thick fog, this marsh black, thick, lumbering forest that is only how the material plane interprets something it cannot fully perceive in truth. The night fin is not land claimed by roots, it is a fold, a metaphysical sag in reality where the veil thins not through violence but through indecision. It's not a place that, like a lot of the other key places that we're gonna learn about, like these waste stones and these different magical spots, but this is one that it's not born of one big moment or one large happening. It is actually over time. It's a large accumulation of these things happening, like way before the War of Sundering, when like the ancient nomads that are talking about when they'd be like traveling and coming through, they might have rested here and had this these arguments and stuff, and those arguments and those moments, they would have been trapped here over and over and over as different people came here and different people argued and different people met. It would have been that act over and over and over that would have eventually created this fold in space that is the night fin. And when these wars that would have came later, the great sundering, and now what we're starting to see is like these battles of different factions, as thousands and thousands of people have begun fighting over this land, it it folds in on itself further. Um, the f- the night fin holds its place as the soul holds a pattern. The veil thins where the souls refuse to pass. Where night fin is, souls can never decide, and if they are to decide, they are already no longer in the fin. Those who die in the night fin do not die because of any absence of preparity or any failure. No, they fail because they linger out of regret or rage or uncertainty. Their souls do not hover but become bound, not free, but existing in this state of metaphysical suspension as the night fin itself does. This is a phenomenon known as elsewhere, a soul eddy, where souls do not anchor, but unlike objects, these places are within themselves many anchors. This is why the night fin doesn't have an actual physical thing like a waste stone, but instead it has many within it. It births guidance without direction, whispers that do not command, lights that do not lead, paths that rearrange themselves mid step. The forest is not hostile, but always considering you. In the night fin, we cannot apply the rules of time or logic or anything that our world knows to be rules. In the night fin, they are not broken, but it is polite to assume that they never applied. Moments stretch not because time allows it or because time slows, but because of the hesitation here. A traveler may walk for hours and arrive where they started, not because they are lost, but because the forest has not accepted their intention. Those who rush don't feel a resistance, and those who wander never feel watched. Those who stop truly stop, but only those who continue to walk are sometimes allowed through. In the trees are the representations of decisions. It is the fact that you are walking in between the trees that you are indecisive. The trees themselves offer with it an ancient age, an ancient weight, each trunk corresponding to a choice never taken by someone who passed beneath it. Branches twist where futures diverged and then collapsed. Leaves whisper fragments of conversations that ended mid sentence. This is why cutting the nightfin tree is disastrous. It is a wood that you cannot sever, it is a possibility. Those who fell trees and report dreams of lives that never lived, some beautiful and some unbearable, but many do not wake sane. In the night fen, we see that it is not of beasts, but of flesh, of things that hunt, of things that eat. A night fen predator senses hesitation like blood in the water, and when it strikes, it does not aim to kill, but to force a decision. Fight, to flee, to stand, to protect. Those who choose to survive more often than those who freeze. This is the test to see if you're truly worthy of the journey that magic has called you to be set on. And that's why the Night Fen and magic have such a strong correlation, as the magic cast in the Night Fen also behaves strangely. Spells do not fail, but they bring to light a question as if everyone you cast will go inexplicably different or wrong, much as Cloud was not able to set the trees on fire and instead it burrowed down and snuffed out, and then all the trees started shaking. And um, not that any of them had divination, but also divination, and nothing like that works here. Um, the Fen just rejects anything that becomes absolute. It amplifies the magic tied to choice, like fate magic, luck, illusion, transformation, spirit guidance, and it resists the magic that are tied to domination. It is never a test of strength or magic or skill, it is of willingness. Those who enter with destiny are already chosen to fail. Those who enter lost but open often pass. The force rearranges paths not to trap but to observe. Who follows others? Who listens? Who decides when no guidance comes? The Night Fen does not select the powerful, it selects the ready. In theory, as many of these have been, the Night Fen would be as to a wound that bleeds. Unlike cursed lands, the Night Fen does not leak darkness, it absorbs it. Many scholars theorize that the Night Fen acts as a pressure valve for the veil, preventing worse ruptures elsewhere by holding uncertainty in one place. If this is true, then destroying the Night Fen would not heal the world, but would tear it open. And at the heart of the Night Fen, you would never find what you would expect. There is no throne, no altar, no ancient evil. There's only a clearing that never stays the same. Those who reach it report different experiences, a vision of a life abandoned, a voice asking nothing, a mirror showing no reflection, a simple question: are you ready? No one agrees what ready means. Those who answer honestly leave, and those who lie stay. The night fin is not alive and it is not dead. It is a wound that bleeds, does not think, but remembers, does not judge, but it waits. The night fin is not a place, it is a moment stretched across miles, shared across the world, a pause the world took when it did not know which future to choose, and it remains there still, waiting for those brave enough to choose without knowing what that choice will cost. And that is a lot to break down. The night fin is truly a giant mystery. As again, I have not even fully flushed out the idea of what this place really is just yet, but we've laid down so much strong groundwork um, of this place being much like the others, much like these intersections where waste stones would be, yet no waste stone can exist here. And instead of it being one of these spots that anchors, is one of these spots that absorbs. I love the idea that it is seen as this dark and evil place, but yet it is just one that is consuming and eating away all of the darkness and all of the habits, as it is a spot that if you'd enter, you cannot leave if you're rigid, stuck to your own destiny. It is one that wants to reshape and remold the path in front of you for you. And we really, really haven't got to explore that too much because we've only seen 4 people ever go to it, and they all went to it at the same time and had the same experience. So, a lot of this is built-in theorized lore that we're giving you so that the idea could be expanded on without having to give away too much. Um, but it fits in with the episode so well, as this was the last time that we'll see the Night Fin for a while, and we get those awesome 2 skits. The second one being about these curses, about these stones, um, which again would be a spirit that is trapped into the stone and then left alone and eventually manifests that wound and becomes a curse, which is like a creature. And then that creature is basically essentially a shadow of what it was, kind of like a really bad evil ghost. And as that wound gets bigger and bigger and bigger and rips more and more space, it actually manifests a real body and becomes this dark evil, like actual creature, like a demon. Uh, and that is what we seen in the Night Fin. That's what that stone was. And the Night Fin absorbing and tracking, eating this magic means that it was doing its job by like protecting and taking care of this place. As we got some of the other lore telling us that like these benevolent spirits and these guiding, protecting spirits will form essentially to protect these magical objects or protect these magical places, and even, protect adventurers from stumbling upon these really, really bad items. However, the Night Fen doesn't have such a spirit because it is that spirit. The forest itself is what protects everything inside of it. And I think that's just a really cool idea to expand upon. And though we don't have it all down yet, you're never going to have it all down at the beginning of something. As you're creating it, as you're exploring it and flushing it out, more and more possibilities are going to pop up. And we're leaving ourselves a lot of room for interpretation here while also giving you guys a couple really cool, solid facts to build off of when you're coming up with your theories and your ideas of what this place is. And that's all that we'll have for so long. Much like the Legion, we're not gonna get a lot of references to the Night Fin, though we do get more action from it because we do have a couple missions that actually require us to come back to it. So there is going to be more Night Fin action in the future. Definitely more than we'll see of the Legion, but not too much. It's going to remain kind of in the background for a majority of the story. But it's awesome to get the groundwork down for it in such an early episode. And again, this was just such an awesome intro because they started in like one of the craziest spots without knowing it, and so it just adds to that creepy and insane build up as like we're all just waiting for that shoe to drop essentially. And I really thought it dropped in episode 6, A Duel at Midnight, but it really couldn't be true to said to drop until episode 7, The Voyage. So you guys are going to have to catch all the way up until there, until we can make some more good connections. But this gives us a very good, solid start and recaps what we might have missed out on some episodes that we lost in the jumble, and gives us a really solid point to bring in our first 2 guest stars who were actually there from the very beginning. They were in both of the first episodes that we lost, but they're still going to be our first guest stars as we go into the next podcast episode. So hopefully you guys stay tuned, hit that follow button, and hit that review. Leave us a 5-star review if you guys could. And make sure while you're there, hit that comment section, add a question. Drop us a question you have, any curiosities or things that you guys might want to learn, or maybe ask us just so that we could have a chance to explain, because we always come back on the podcast at the very end and answer some questions. We do have a nice question queue building up from some of our Fandom Fridays and other things that we do over on the Twitch channel. So make sure you guys go check that out, Twitch Big Blunt Johnson. And that's just always a really good time over there. So make sure you guys go check out the Twitch Big Blunt Johnson and the YouTube just BU Entertainment. And if you guys are watching on one of those, go over and check out the Spotify at Spells and Scepters, because we are cooking up for the podcast over there now. We are pretty much there, I think. That brings us most of the way through episode 2. Of course, there was so much happen as after they got out of the forest. They were met with Heimdall, and we have that whole interaction with the bird looking like a dragon and finding the wisp and capturing him for their team pet, and now Morph's a part of the team. And Heimdall's kind of sketchy, but he's leading us to a safer place, so it's okay. And then we meet up with Heimdall's crew and his people and their Legion guys, and they're all kind of scary and sketchy. And now Heimdall doesn't seem so scary and sketchy. And Heimdall is going to lead us the rest of the way by himself. And then he leads us all the way to Father Talius, who, of course, takes us the last leg of the journey. But it's just an awesome interaction and a awesome way to bring in the rest of the series, as we got into a lot more character development later on, but this was just such a solid place to start it off and to start building some of that. So I think my favorite part about it is, of course, the curse anatomy or life cycle, because I've been waiting to go into that, and there's even more to go into, believe it or not. So we barely scratched the surface of it, and I'm looking forward to a podcast episode where we get to talk about some specific curses and how they specifically turn into whatever creature there is, because there is like a full life cycle, and just it's insane. There's a whole chart for it in the module for which curses do what and what becomes what. It's actually insane. For the most part, it could be as diverse as you want to make it as a DM, just depending on how it actually happens. But There's just so much cool shit with it because it all can be linked into one of the spirits that we also have. So the curses are essentially like the spirits that get trapped. I think a ghost or a spirit would be like one that chooses to say essentially they like trap themselves. So we have like the regular um the pale spirit, which is essentially just your like common ghost. And we got like the poltergeist and um there's a couple different ones. Those are the only two I can ever remember off the top of my head. Me and Cloud were already kind of breaking into it and talking about some of them and some of the curses, but those were the exact two I brought up in that scenario too. I think there's also a lady in white. She's just your standard ghost, regular ghost. Um, but there's a lot of different ones that are essentially reflections of the curses, and the curses are just essentially the same thing but powered up with some sort of dark magic. So they have one ability that reflects something, some version of the curse that they were made from. And I think it's really cool because you could essentially map it out as a DM how to uh, how to place a curse down, like the object a curse, and make it into a cursed item, and then how to, potentially have a ghost or a spirit or something that the party would have to fight, and then have it eventually evolve down the line and become something even worse. So it just has so much potential for encounters and DM's lore and DM's expansion later on down the line. And it connects so much to everything else that's there as long as you kind of like stick to the source content when you're branching it out and reskinning it and keep some of the similar ideas. It'll always have something else that it'll tie back to. Um, so there's always something to explore upon or an idea to for your players to follow, which I think is the best part about this whole system is how well it is connected to everything in it. Got rambling for a moment there. My mouth got dry. But yeah, so there's so much with the curses and the spirits and how the monsters connect together, as well as not just the curses and spirits, but the monsters and magic itself. Each of the monsters or beasts um, have a component and some sort of magical element to them that you can then also use for magic. And whether you want to go about monster hunting and collect the beast components to consume for sigils or for activating ascended spells, which are basically just like rituals. Um, you can either go about it that way and hunt them and collect the beast components, or you can study creatures, make familiar contracts, which allows you to summon that creature for its magical purpose using your own magic infused in like the summoning of it, and it allows you to synergize with those creature types. So as long as you know the creature's type and what it's kind of going to do, you can get it out and start synergizing with your own spells and your own battle plans, whether it's controlling the battlefield or boosting your magic or casting your magic for cheaper or just having another player on the field to help you cushion against enemies, maybe absorb some damage, maybe just deal some regular attacks back. And so it's just a very, very awesome system, the way the magic is connected and how deep the lore runs for these creatures and monsters and beasts to spells and spirits to curses and cursed items to magic items, and how it all keeps this balance for the world, for this natural order, quote unquote. Because, like I said, with the waystones and these spots where magic is really, really important, which the Night Fin is one of those spots, by the way. We also have the keystones, these items and people, not necessarily people, but could be creatures as well, um, that are super, super important to the world, and having that magic anchored here, like these giant creatures. Um, and so essentially, those anchors are represented with not only the spots like the waystones and spots such as the night fin, but also with items, and not just cursed items, but also magic items, items that were built from so many mages coming together and putting magic together into one item creates a uh, holding point in the world for magic to exist. And so that is another thing that we're going to get into in the future is magic items. They do go hand in hand with these curses that we're breaking into. And so it'll be awesome in the future to expand upon that and to really get into how this is all balancing out, how this world is mapping out. Because, like I said, just like with the factions and the powers that'll arise, it's all about the players. Will the players go about killing more monsters and essentially making this flux happen? Will they go about taming more monsters and trying to, just have more in general because that could also affect this flux. And I just think there's so many different ways that it could go in the future that I'm really excited for our players. Like I'm almost jealous because man, they got such an exciting and promising future ahead of them for this story. It could really go any way. It could go left, it could go right. It is up to them to decide how they choose to live, the actions they make, the magic they choose to learn, and the teammates that they make, the alliances, the enemies, the world in general will all be shaped around how they play. And with our guest stars coming on, they will have some say in these other factions and these other outcomes that'll be happening because there'll be other stories running alongside our main story. But I think this has just been such a beautiful groundwork that we've been able to lay down here. A truly fantastic way to bring in the series. And I know we're only a couple episodes in at this point, and I don't expect you guys to be caught up too far. So hopefully, you guys are caught up to like at least episode 3 if you're catching this. We're going to take a jump through the podcast as we get our guest stars in here and we start breaking down the episodes and characters with them. So it's going to be a really, really phenomenal trip for you guys. Hopefully, you guys hit that follow button and drop us a review so that you guys can stay tuned and give us some better questions that we can ask and answer back to you. Because that's what we need. We need some questions so we can answer. We have all of the information, but no idea how we should share it yet. So hit us up and let us know how you would like this information to be presented. Did you guys like the skits? Do you guys like the co-stars? Do you guys like the segments at the end? What is your guys' favorite part of the podcast? Let us know because we want to get more information from you, how to make it better and how to make a more presentable series as we go forward with these. Again, thank you guys for tuning in, and hopefully, you guys are keeping your spells prepared and enjoying the magical journey. I know I am, and until the next one, I have to catch you there. It's Spells and Scepters.